Hello everyone. Please tell me, which city are you listening from? What time is it there? Is everything okay? Or does it feel like someone's watching you? I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember lying in my bed around midnight, scrolling through some Reddit threads on sleep paralysis stories, then tossing the phone to the side. My bedroom was cold as usual, my blanket was soft, and I heard the low humming of the fridge from the kitchen next door. Nothing unusual, but when I opened my eyes again, everything was wrong. I wasn't in my bed. The ceiling above me was cracked and yellowish, with patches of mold. The sheets beneath me felt stiff, rough, and smelled faintly of metal like blood. I sat up slowly, expecting the walls of my small apartment, but instead I saw a room I'd never been in. The wallpaper was peeling off, the windows were boarded shut, the air smelled like rot. At first I thought I was dreaming, maybe it was sleepwalking. I'd read stories of people ending up blocks away without realizing it, but this wasn't my city, it wasn't even my time zone. The digital clock on the dresser blinked 300 AM in bright red numbers. It wasn't mine. Either nothing here was mine. I looked around. There were strange markings carved into the wood floor around the bed, like a circle symbols. I didn't understand. The walls were covered in scratches, not made by furniture or time. They looked desperate. Human, like someone tried to claw their way out. I stumbled out of bed. My legs were weak. I touched the door handle. It was freezing cold, but it turned. The hallway outside was dimly lit with flickering bulbs swinging slightly from a ceiling. I couldn't even see the hallway stretched unnaturally long, like a hotel corridor that went on forever. I called out, "Hello, silence." Then footsteps behind me. I spun around. No one. I backed away, slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The door to the bedroom had vanished, gone, like it was never there. There was only a wall, now stained and cracked. I began walking. Every door I passed was shut, some sealed with rusted chains, some nailed shut with crooked boards. I reached out to one and gently touched it. It vibrated. Something on the other side was breathing slowly. Patiently, I didn't open it. Further down the corridor, the light got dimmer. At one point, it was pitch black. I reached into my pocket. No phone, no flashlight, just a cold coin I didn't recognize, and a small wrinkled piece of paper on it. A single line was scrawled in red ink: "Stay in the bed. That's the rule." I stopped breathing. I had broken the rule. Suddenly something behind me growled, not loudly, soft, raspy, like it came from something that hadn't used its throat in centuries. I ran. The corridor twisted as I moved. Doors blurred past, the floor dipped and rose like a living thing. My feet ached. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. Whatever was behind me, it was getting closer. I turned a corner and finally found an open door. Without thinking, I slammed it shut behind me and collapsed on the floor. I was in another room, but different from the first. Clean, familiar. It looked like my childhood bedroom. My old blue curtains, my Superman poster, the old wooden shelf filled with toys. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. There was no view, just blackness, not night void. Like the house floated in nothingness. I turned to the bed. It was the same bed I'd grown up with. I almost smiled. Then I saw the blood stain on the pillow and the second me, lying in bed, sleeping peacefully. I didn't understand. The person in the bed was me. Same haircut, same scar on the eyebrow, same twitching of the right hand. I stared, paralyzed. Was I dead, dreaming, watching a version of myself before something happened? Then the sleeping me opened his eyes, but they weren't mine. They were completely black, no white, no pupil. He smiled slowly and whispered, "You weren't supposed to leave the bed." The room tilted. I lost balance. The floor cracked, and from every corner of the room, arms began reaching, pale, long-fingered, clawed. They grabbed my legs, my waist, my chest. I screamed and struggled, but they were pulling me down through the floor. Into darkness. Just before I was fully consumed, I saw the other me stand up, tilt his head, and walk to the door with my face. My voice he left, and I was gone. I woke up again back in my bed, my real bed. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds. My phone lay next to me dead. I sat up, heart hammering. Everything was normal. I looked at my hands. They were mine. I went to the bathroom. My face was still mine. But on my neck, just under the jawline, was a mark, a faint red handprint, since that night. I've never been the same. I don't sleep well. I hear whispers at 300 a.m. Even though I sleep with the lights on sometimes, I wake up and find muddy footprints at the edge of the bed. Once I found a note on my pillow: stay in the bed. That's the rule every time I fall asleep. I fear I'll wake up in another place, in another body, or worse, someone else might wake up in mine, because now I know the truth. There are copies of us sleeping, waiting, and if you leave your bed at the wrong time, one of them will take your place, and you'll be trapped in the house that doesn't exist forever. When I moved into the house, my aunt left me. I thought I was escaping the noise of the city, the endless honking, the sleepless nights, and the suffocating pace. Shed passed suddenly, a heart attack, they said, and the family wanted nothing to do with the place. I didn't care. It was a blessing in disguise for me, a quiet old home in the countryside, surrounded by trees and silence, a writer's dream. The house was fully furnished, frozen in time, doilies on the furniture, family portraits that stared a little too long, and a bedroom on the second floor where the bed was already made. I was too tired to question it. The mattress looked old, but comfortable enough that night. I collapsed into it like a stone in water. I remember waking up around 3:12 a.m., unable to breathe properly. My chest felt heavy, my body cold, and I could swear the mattress was wet. I ran my hand over the sheets, but they were dry. Bone dry, no sweat, no spilled water, yet I could still feel the dampness in my skin like it had soaked through me. I turned on the lights. Nothing, just the bed and me. I chalked it up to stress. But the next morning I noticed something strange, a bruise on my thigh. Purple, small, almost like a fingerprint. I didn't remember bumping into anything. And I brushed it off, though uneasily still. The house was peaceful, and I needed the silence. The second night I felt it again, the wetness. But this time, it was thicker, clammier, like something had seeped between the mattress layers. I pressed my hand harder and felt a soft resistance underneath, as if something was shifting between the padding. My pulse raced. I tore off the blanket, flipped the mattress edge, and found nothing. Still, the next morning, 2 more bruises, one on my back, another on my arm, like fingers digging in. I asked the neighbor, an old woman with cloudy eyes and a shrill voice, if she knew anything about the house. That room was locked when your aunt lived here, she said, glancing up at the second floor window. She said, someone died in that bed, a girl long time ago. They never told me what really happened, but I'd see the paramedics that night. They carried her out at dawn. My mouth went dry. I hadn't heard that from anyone in the family. She died in this bed, I asked. The woman nodded slowly, then whispered, and your aunt never slept there again. That night I didn't want to go back upstairs, but I had to. I couldn't let an old story get to me. I left all the lights on, and I lay on the edge of the mattress like a visitor, not an owner, at 300 a.m. sharp. I woke to the sound of shifting fabric. The mattress rose slightly beneath me, as if breathing. I didn't move, I didn't blink, then slowly something began pressing into my back through the mattress, not from underneath it, but from inside it. It moved, like a hand I shot up, heart racing, the bed stilled. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and looked closely. The center of the mattress had a faint bump. It throbbed. I reached for my pocket knife, slit open the fabric, and pulled apart the stuffing. Something moved. It slithered sideways. Between the padding, not visible, but definitely there, I could hear it dragging across the springs like something slick and living. I dropped the knife and ran in the morning. I returned with gloves and a crowbar. I pulled the mattress apart completely. It had 2 inner layers, one foam, one stuffed. I ripped through them both. In the deepest lining, I found something embedded, a jawbone, not a toy, not an animal's, a human jaw. Cracked and yellowed with age, I collapsed. Police were called. Forensics came. They found more bones in the frame of the bed, pelvis, ribs, fingers, all stuffed inside the hollow metal bars like someone had been buried there, piece by piece, they said. The girl must have died there, hidden for decades. My aunt must have known. Maybe she tried to hide it. Or maybe she just tried to forget. I stayed in a hotel for the week after that. But the bruises didn't stop. Each night I'd wake up at 300 a.m. no matter where I was, with new ones on my arms, my neck, my thighs, hands that gripped in silence, invisible fingers that pressed into my ribs while I slept. Doctors couldn't explain it. No blood disease, no trauma. I stopped sleeping altogether. One night I broke down and returned to the house. I stood in the empty room where the bed once was, just bare floor now, and yet the smell was there, damp, metallic, faintly sweet, and the bruises, they were already forming. I screamed into the emptiness, "What do you want?" From me, and from the shadows behind me, a voice whispered, a girl's voice, trembling and angry. "They never told you, but you sleep where I died then." The floor beneath me pulsed once, as if remembering, and went still. Now I don't sleep at night, not ever. I can't, because something crawled between the mattress layers, and it still finds me no matter where I go, no matter what bed I lie in. It bruises, it waits. And every night, I feel it getting closer to the surface, getting stronger. One day, it won't just leave marks, it will pull me down into the space between sleep and death, where she's waiting, where it lives, and that day I won't wake up again. I moved into my sister's apartment after she disappeared. No one said that aloud, of course. The police classified it as a voluntary absence. No forced entry, no ransom, no signs of violence. Her phone was still charging on the nightstand. Her clothes were untouched. The kettle was still half full. Only the bed was unmade, and she was gone. The landlord wanted the place emptied and a grieving, numb, needing space volunteered to handle her belongings. But something inside me wanted to feel her presence. Again, that's why I kept the bed. It was an old, double-sized mattress with a deep middle dip, like it had held someone for years. It creaked oddly when I sat on it, but I convinced myself it was just the springs. She always loved vintage things, everything old has secrets, she used to say. She meant it as a good thing. I thought I did too. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed, turned, tried to curl into her old blanket at exactly 3:17 a.m. I felt it, a pressure underneath me, not like a spring, not like a shift in fabric, but a movement, something that shifted between the layers. I froze, not metaphorically. My body stiffened, like it had entered survival mode. My fingers gripped the sheets. I didn't breathe. Whatever it was, it slithered beneath me, not fast but deliberate, like it knew I was awake. I jumped out of bed. The room was silent. I turned on the lights, pulled off the blanket, peeled the fitted sheet. There was nothing underneath. I even unzipped the mattress cover. Still nothing, just foam. Springs, dust. I stayed awake until morning. The next night I was sure it was a dream. I drank chamomile tea, kept a lamp on, and tried again. But just as I began to drift, a sudden chill passed under my spine, as if the mattress exhaled. That's when the wetness started. I shot up. My shirt clung to my back, damp. The sheets were soaked beneath me. Not with sweat, this was cold. I turned on the light again, touched the mattress. My fingers pressed into fabric that felt slick, almost slimy, but when I pulled my hand back it was dry. No scent, no stain, nothing. The mattress looked completely untouched, but my skin wasn't. The next morning, I found a bruise on my lower back, deep round, almost like a grip, like fingers. I brushed it off as an injury from sleeping wrong, until it happened again and again. Every night, new bruises, thigh, arm, collarbone, some too high like I'd been grabbed. Others low, too close to areas that made my stomach turn. I started documenting them, photos, notes, times. Every time the clock blinked somewhere between 300 and 320 a.m. It wasn't until the 6th night that I couldn't take it anymore. I flipped the mattress and screamed. Because between the top layer and the bottom wedged in a tear along the side like it had forced itself in was a long split seam stitched back up with black thread. The thread wasn't professional. It looked torn and redone over and over. I cut it open. What I found inside made me dry heave. Hair, teeth, skin, all tangled together in the foam like someone or something had buried itself between the layers. I yanked out what looked like part of a human jawbone. It wasn't rotten, it was fresh. I didn't call the police. I didn't know what I would even say. I dragged the mattress outside into the alley and left it there. I slept on the couch that night. At 3:17 a.m. I woke up to the smell of damp cotton. The couch was wet beneath me. When I lifted the cushion, I saw a thread black and the same voice I hadn't yet heard aloud whispered behind me, "You're all ready." Inside, I tried leaving the apartment the next day, but my legs gave out. I fell halfway down the stairs. My thighs burned. Later in the mirror, I saw new bruises, darker, more defined, as if hands had been crawling beneath my skin. I went to a doctor. He said they were pressure injuries, but I hadn't laid on the bed in 2 nights. That night I burned the mattress. I doused it in lighter fluid, dragged it to the parking lot, and set it on fire. The flames climbed high. It shrieked, "I swear to God." It screamed. I thought it was over. It wasn't. I bought a new bed, but the bruises came back. One night I opened my eyes and saw a shape curled next to me under the blanket, not moving, just watching. I blinked, it vanished. The mattress didn't move, but it felt heavier, like I wasn't the only one lying on it. Now I hear the seams stretch at night. Not squeaks, not metal, flesh stretching. I tried sleeping in the tub, in the closet, on the floor. No matter where I go, I always wake up on the bed with new bruises. Wetter sheets, and the feeling of something crawling between the mattress layers, still breathing, still hungry. It wasn't the first time I felt something strange while trying to fall asleep. I've had sleep paralysis before, hypnic jerks. Even the occasional vivid dream that left me shaking in the morning, but this was different because this time I wasn't dreaming. And I was wide awake when something touched me under the blanket. It was late September when I moved into my new place, a quiet, semi-furnished flat on the 2nd floor of an old building. The kind where the paint peels slightly at the edges, and the radiators groan like old men. I didn't mind. It was cheap, private, and exactly what I needed after a rough breakup. The bedroom was simple. Just a bed with a creaky frame, a dusty ceiling fan, and long beige curtains that barely held back the city lights at night. I always felt a little exposed in that room, like the walls leaned inward at night to listen. Still, I brushed it off. The first few nights went by fine. Then it started. It began with a small tug on the blanket. I was lying on my side, eyes closed but mind racing, the usual late-night spiral of overthinking. That's when I felt it, a small, deliberate pull on the blanket near my feet. Not the wind, not me shifting a pull. I shot up, nothing. The room was quiet, the fan circling lazily. Above my feet were still covered. I told myself it was muscle memory. Maybe I twitched and mistook it for something else. But the next night the tug came again, this time higher near my knees. I started sleeping with one leg outside the blanket. A trick I used as a kid to cool down, but that night I felt fingers, not a brush, not air, fingers slow, cold, deliberate. They pressed against the outside of my thigh just for a moment, and then were gone. I didn't sleep again until morning. I inspected the bed the next day, lifted the mattress, checked under the frame. Nothing, no sign of rats or bugs, no loose wires. Nothing that could mimic the sensation of fingers that night. I slept with the lights on, still the touch returned, only this time it moved from my thigh to my waist, a slow cold line of pressure that made my stomach twist. I yanked the blanket off and threw myself out of bed, and for a split second I thought I saw the blanket lift, as if someone had just let go from beneath. I tried convincing myself it was stress. I started working longer hours, staying up with TV or noise machines, anything to keep from falling into that vulnerable state between sleep and awareness. But exhaustion always wins, and each time I gave in. It waited. I began to notice changes. The blanket always looked slightly disturbed in the morning, bunched up in places I never touched. Sometimes I woke up with it tucked tightly around me, as if someone had carefully wrapped me in my sleep, and once, just once, I woke up with my arm outside the blanket, and 4 pale fingerprints on my wrist. I called an old friend, Harper. She had always been into spiritual stuff, crystals, tarot cleansing rituals. I never took it seriously, but desperation makes you a believer. She came over with sage salt and a firm voice. "This isn't just energy," she said, as she walked around the bedroom. "It's attention. Something has noticed you, and it thinks you're alone. What is it?" Harper didn't answer. She just stared at the bed and then quietly muttered, "Don't let it under the blanket again." That night, I tried to stay awake. I set alarms every hour. But sometime past 300 a.m. I drifted, and that's when it got bold. The blanket shifted all at once from my feet to my chest. It didn't tug or brush. It hugged tight, like arms wrapping around me from all sides. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Then I felt it, a breath. Hot, wet, right beside my ear, and a whisper so close I felt the words more than heard them. "Warm now. Stay." I blacked out. When I woke, it was morning. The lights were off, and the blanket was folded perfectly at my feet. I stopped sleeping in that room, took to the couch, with only a thin sheet. But some nights even there I feel it, a chill, a tug, a whisper. I think it followed the blanket. I burned it in a public trash barrel behind my building, watched it go up in flames, smoky and slow. But that night, I woke up under a blanket I didn't own, old, faded, warm to warm, and the last thing I heard before slipping into sleep was the same voice, softer this time, almost loving. "Thank you for bringing me back now. I sleep uncovered, but still some nights, something touches me anyway." There's something deeply unsettling about sleeping with your bed facing the door. They say it's bad feng shui. They say you should never lie directly in line with the entrance. That it's the coffin position, the dead are carried out feet first. Just like you are lying waiting. I never believed in that. Until the night the door opened at exactly 300 a.m. I had just moved into a small rental house on the outskirts of a quiet town. It was the kind of house you don't question too much, because the Rent is cheap, and the air smells like pine trees the previous tenant left in a hurry, no furniture. Just dust outlines on the floor and a handwritten note left inside one of the drawers. Don't face the door, don't stay past 3, I laughed when I saw it, threw it away, thought it was a prank, then I moved the bed in. And by sheer coincidence, or maybe design, the only place it fit in the bedroom was directly facing the door. The first few nights were peaceful, until Tuesday I went to bed at midnight. Nothing unusual, but when I woke up, I was cold, not chilly freezing. I glanced at the clock on my phone, 300 a.m., then I heard it. The click of the doorknob, turning the door creaked open, just a few inches. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I stared at the gap, nothing was there, but the hallway beyond looked darker than it should have, and colder, like the heat stopped at the doorway. I sat up slowly, heart hammering in my ears, and then, as if in response, the door closed again, gently, deliberately. I convinced myself it was the house settling, old wood, drafty hinges. I even taped the latch the next day. But the next night, 300 a.m., the latch clicked again, the door opened, this time wider. I began locking the door, deadbolt too, didn't matter, it still opened. Always at 300 a.m., not 259, not 301, like something was waiting for a signal. I installed a camera in the room, motion-activated infrared. The first 2 nights it recorded nothing. The third night I woke up at 300 a.m. again. The door had opened slowly. And on the screen the next morning, the recording cut out. From 25,957 to 30,300 for pure static. When it resumed, the door was open, and my blanket was on the floor. I called the landlord. He sighed when I brought it up. You saw it too, huh? What do you mean? 2. There's a reason the last tenant left. Said the house had a pattern, same time every night. Door opens, then footsteps, then he trailed off. Then what, he hung up. I set up bells on the doorknob. Not digital, not Wi-Fi, just simple metal bells. From a craft shop. That night, I lay in bed staring at the door. Eyes wide open, 259 nothing, then the air changed, colder, denser, I could see my breath. And then the bells rang just once, not jingled, not bumped, rung like someone had grabbed them. The door opened, and something stepped in. I didn't see a person. I saw a shaped, tall, hunched, too thin. It stood in the corner of the room. Not moving, watching. I couldn't see its face, or maybe it didn't have one. It never moved, not until I blinked, then it was closer. I blinked again, closer. I couldn't scream, my voice wouldn't work, my body wouldn't respond. Then it bent slow, deliberate, as if trying to look directly into my soul. And just as suddenly it vanished, the door creaked shut. I found claw marks on the inside of the door the next morning, scratched from the inside like something was trying to stay in, not break out. I sleep on the couch now, but it doesn't matter. Every night, at 300 a.m., the bedroom door opens, even though I'm not in there, even though I locked it. Sometimes I hear footsteps cross the hallway. Sometimes I wake up to find the bedroom lights on. Sometimes I see the door closing as I open my eyes, and once I found muddy footprints in the living room leading up to the couch, stopping right by my face. I've thought of moving, but I can't, because now no matter where I sleep, hotel, friend's house, even in my car, every door I face opens at 300 a.m., and something steps through, watching, waiting, getting closer. I've never liked that my bed faces the door. There's something unsettling about it, like the hallway is always watching. Like the darkness behind that frame has its own breath, its own rhythm, waiting for yours to fall out of sync. Feng Shui says it's bad luck, my grandmother used to say. Don't sleep with your feet pointing to the door, that's how the dead leave. I never cared much for either until the night the door opened. at exactly 300 a.m. It wasn't a creak, it wasn't a subtle click or gentle shift. It was a smooth, deliberate swing. I woke up the instant it happened, not from a sound but from the feeling, a sudden drop in pressure like the air had been disturbed. My eyes snapped open and locked straight ahead. The hallway light was off, and yet I could see the outline of the door wide open. I live alone. I didn't move, not at first. I just watched, waiting for something, anything to step into view. To prove I wasn't dreaming, to let me scream or fight or run, but nothing came. The hallway remained dark, silent, still. I could feel it, a presence just beyond the threshold, watching, waiting. I pulled the blanket up to my chin slowly, like any sudden motion might trigger whatever was there. My phone was charging on the nightstand just 2 feet away. But I didn't dare move. Then the cold started creeping in, not from the window. From the doorway, a slow crawl across the floor, thick and damp, like fog rolling on cold ground. My chest tightened, then I heard it, a footstep, soft, bare, deliberate. I squeezed my eyes shut, convinced myself it was a dream, a trick of the mind, sleep paralysis, but I wasn't paralyzed. I could feel my fingers trembling beneath the blanket. I could hear my own breath, short, uneven. And then I heard another breath, not mine, right beside me. I turned over slowly. No one, but the blanket on the other side of the bed was lifted slightly, like someone was lying there, or had just gotten up. I finally reached for my phone, shaking hands. No sound. Number 911 call, just the flashlight. When I turned it on and aimed it toward the doorway, nothing but the door closed, not slammed, not clicked, just back in place. And on the wooden floor in front of it, a wet footprint, bare, facing the bed. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I placed a motion camera facing the door. I told myself if it happened again, I'd have proof that maybe I could rationalize it, but deep down, I knew it wasn't a one-time thing. It was the beginning. The camera recorded nothing for 3 nights, then on the 4th night, at 300 a.m. sharp, the footage glitched, the image froze, and when it returned, the door was open and the hallway black, but in the frame, for just 4 seconds, a figure stood at the edge of the bed, still shapeless, too tall for any normal person. Then gone. I moved the bed, put it against the wall, no more facing the door, no more giving it a path, but it didn't matter. Because now, every night at 300 a.m., the door still opens, even though I lock it, even though I wedge it shut, it opens. And when I wake up, not always from sound, but always at that time, I see it. Sometimes it stands in the hallway, sometimes closer, sometimes I feel the bed dip beside me. And one time I turned over and it was already under the blanket. I don't think it'll sleep again, not really, because it doesn't need the door anymore, it just needs me to look, and I did, and now it comes through. The first time it happened, I thought it was a dream, a deep sleep on a cold winter night, bundled in my blanket, like always, arms tucked, legs folded, warmth pulled tightly around me. I remember falling asleep to the familiar hum of the heater, the distant ticking of the wall clock, and the soft creak of the floorboards settling beneath old wood. But in the middle of the night, I woke suddenly, still warm, still in bed, except the blanket felt tight, tighter than it should. I tried shifting, but something pressed back, not hard, just enough to make it clear I wasn't the only one under the blanket. I froze. My body rigid, my breath held hostage in my throat. Was someone in my bed? No, that wasn't possible. I live alone, doors locked, no one has a key, and yet I felt it, a presence, still silent, lying beside me under the same blanket, as if we'd always shared it. I couldn't see it, didn't dare move or look, but I could feel the heat, not like human warmth, but a thick, dense energy like air you can't breathed like someone exhaling from nowhere, and the worst part, the weight shifted not a lot, just enough to let me know it was aware I was awake. In the morning I dismissed it, told myself it was a dream, a sleep paralysis hallucination, stress, but that day I found something that made my skin crawl, a long strand of black hair too long to be mine to course. Sitting on the pillow beside me, I don't have guests, haven't had anyone over in months, and yet there it was, like someone had slept beside me under my blanket night after night. It continued, always around 300 a.m. I'd wake up sweating, anxious, and the blanket, my safety, my warmth, would feel foreign, as though it was no longer wrapped around me, but being shared, or worse, used sometimes. I'd feel pressure near my back, like a hand resting lightly on my shoulder, or fingers brushing my ankle once, I swear. I felt nails drag slowly across my shin, no pain, no scratches, just a message in here. I tried throwing the blanket off one night. Got up, sat on the couch, left the lights on. I watched TV until sunrise, but when I returned to my room, the blanket was back on the bed, neatly spread with a dent in the middle, as though someone had just risen from it. Desperate, I bought a brand new comforter, new sheets, new pillows, threw the old ones out, burned the blanket that night. I slept with the window open, the new blanket wrapped tight, trying to believe I had left it behind, but at 301 a.m. I woke up to the same pressure on my chest, and when I looked down, the new blanket had shifted. Something was under it, rising, breathing, slow, measured. With every inhale the blanket lifted just slightly, and every exhale brought it back down, but it wasn't me. I bolted upright, heart racing, and yanked the blanket off. Nothing, but I knew it had been there. The warmth still lingered in the space beside me, and the pillow indented. I stopped sleeping in the bed after that. Started taking pills to force sleep on the living room floor, sometimes in the bathtub, anywhere but that bed. But 2 nights ago I slipped, too tired, too careless. I crawled into the bed, just for a minute, just to rest my back. I woke up under the blanket, warm and not alone, and this time it spoke, a faint whisper, lips near my ear. Mine now. I screamed, thrashed, tore the blanket away, and stumbled to the floor, crawled toward the light switch. And when I turned to look, just for a second, the blanket had lifted like a person rising from sleep, but no one was there, only a faint depression that slowly faded. I don't know what it is, a ghost, a shadow, something that slipped through the cracks of sleep and warmth and routine, but I know it waits every night under that blanket, not for comfort, but for company, and every night it grows more patient, more clever. I never pull the blanket up past my waist anymore, but sometimes I wake up fully tucked and wrapped tight, and I can feel something gently holding me, breathing slowly behind me, waiting for me to accept it. The first time it happened, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd rolled over too hard, maybe I was dreaming and didn't notice, maybe I just fell off the bed. It happens, right? But the second night changed everything, because this time I didn't fall. I was placed there. I live alone. My apartment is on the 2nd floor of a quiet complex in the outskirts of town. It's nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a living room that echoes too much when it rains. The bedroom is small, with my bed pushed up against the far wall under a single window, the kind of setup you expect in an old building, cozy, creaky, always just a little cold. For the first few months, everything was normal, until I started waking up somewhere else the first morning. I woke up on the floor with my blanket still tucked tightly around me, my pillow too positioned perfectly beneath my head. That's what was strange. If I had rolled off, it wouldn't have been clean. I would have been tangled. The pillow would have stayed on. the bed, but no, it felt deliberate, like I'd been moved. I started paying more attention after that, not just to my sleep, but to the room itself. I placed a glass of water on the nightstand to check for movement. I placed a slipper near the edge of the bed. I left my phone recording audio overnight. When I woke up the next morning, once again, on the floor the water glass was untouched, the slipper hadn't moved. But the audio recording at 2:47 a.m. there was a creak, not loud, not distant, right next to the mic, then a dragging sound, soft like fabric across wood, and then breathing, not mine, deeper, slower. Wrong. I told myself I was sleepwalking. But I'd never done that in my life. Still, I tried everything: meditation, sleeping pills, sleeping on the couch, didn't matter. I always woke up somewhere else, once under the bed, once in the hallway, once terrifyingly with my head resting on the bathroom sink, as if someone had cradled me there. Then came the night I left the camera on. Just once I positioned it across the room facing the bed, motion activated, infrared. Nothing fancy. I didn't sleep much that night, more like I drifted in and out. When I woke, I was on the floor again, but not just that. The blanket was folded perfectly beside me, the pillow back on the bed, and my camera on the floor, turned off, lens cracked. And I checked the footage, only one clip had saved. It began at 2:43 a.m. It shows me sleeping. Then the edge of the blanket lifts, not from me, not from wind, from behind. A shadow stretches across the bed, long, thin, but unmistakably shaped like a human form. No feet, no face, just a presence. And slowly, gently, it begins pulling me from the mattress. But here's the part that haunts me. I don't resist. My body doesn't move, but my eyes are wide open. Since that night, I've tried everything: switching rooms, sleeping at a friend's place, even staying awake until dawn. But the moment I sleep, even just a nap, I wake up on the floor. Not just in my apartment, anywhere. Hotels, friends, houses, airplanes. Always placed, always wrapped, always cold, and always between 240 and 310 a.m. One night, I left a note on the floor beside me, just 2 words. Why me? The next morning, a reply was written in pencil. Beneath it, you're the one who dreams of falling. Stopped asking questions, because now every time I wake up on the floor, it's closer. I don't know what it is. But last night I didn't just wake up lying down. I woke up sitting with its breath on my neck, and I think next time it won't let me go. It began on a Monday, 3:17 a.m. sharp, precise. I was fast asleep when the bed trembled. Beneath me, just a short vibration, like someone had nudged it, or something had brushed past it. I shot upright, heart pounding, ears straining. Nothing. The room was quiet still. I brushed it off, a dream maybe, or a small earthquake. But the next night at the exact same time, it happened again. The same subtle shake, enough to wake me, enough to freeze the breath in my chest. The bed frame creaked slightly, and for a split second I thought I saw the edge of the mattress dip, as if someone sat down beside me. I didn't move, didn't breathe, because I suddenly had the overwhelming sensation that I wasn't alone. And whatever was in that room was watching, I told myself. I was overthinking. Maybe my old bed was unstable. I checked the frame the next day, tightened the bolts, braced the legs. Everything was solid. But the next night, 3:17 a.m., the bed shook again, stronger, longer, the kind of shake that rattles your bones and sends your soul into retreat. I turned on the light, panicked, but no one was there. Just a faint cold spot at the foot of the bed, and a small handprint on the sheet. Too small to be mine. I started tracking it. Every night, the shaking grew worse. From a light tremble to a full-on jolt, the kind of movement you only expect during a nightmare. But this wasn't a dream. I recorded everything. set up a camera at the foot of the bed, a microphone, even used an EMF reader my brother had for ghost hunting. Videos the results chilling at exactly 3:17 a.m. Every night the EMF spiked the bed, jolted violently, and the camera froze for exactly 8 seconds. When it resumed, there were deep indentations on both sides of the mattress, as if two people had been lying beside me, but I had gone to bed alone. I contacted the landlord. He laughed nervously, then said, "I'm surprised you lasted this long." I pressed him. He finally confessed 2 previous tenants had left abruptly. One claimed they woke up pinned to the bed every night. The other left without taking anything, just ran. They said the bedroom was built over an old room, a cellar boarded up decades ago. It was once a servant's quarters. One servant, a young girl, was rumored to have died down there. Trapped, forgotten, her body never recovered, but every night, after 300 a.m., neighbors claimed to hear someone kicking and screaming beneath the floorboards. I ripped up the carpet the same day. Beneath it, rotten wooden panels, and under those a locked trapdoor. The wood was cold damp. I pried it open. A ladder led down into pure blackness. I didn't go down, not yet that night. I didn't sleep. I waited, lights on, eyes open at 3:17 a.m. The bed didn't just shake, it lifted 2 inches off the floor, hovered, then slammed down. My breath caught, the temperature dropped to near freezing, and then a voice, a child's voice, soft, broken. "Why did you leave me?" I ran, slept in my car, contacted a priest, a medium, a psychic, anyone. The medium entered my room, stood over the bed, and whispered, "She's not alone anymore." When I asked who else was there, she looked at me and said, "The one who took her place." Then she left, refused to return. I sealed the trapdoor, moved the bed, slept on the couch, but no matter where I sleep at 3:17 a.m., the shaking finds me, first the bed, then the couch. Now even the floor vibrates. And last night I woke up on the ceiling, yes, the ceiling, lying perfectly still, as if gravity had been reversed just for me. The worst part, I don't feel alone anymore. I feel crowded, as if something has climbed into my skin, as if someone else is breathing through me, and every time the clock ticks toward 3:17 a.m. I hear that small voice whisper in my ear, "This is our bed now," and the shaking begins again. It was the kind of deal too good to be true. A luxury queen-sized mattress, barely used, sold at 1/3 of the price. Armand had just moved into his new studio apartment after a bitter breakup, and was looking to restart everything new: job, new home, new life. The mattress came from a classifieds listing with a short message: selling due to urgent move, pickup only, must go today. When Armand arrived at the address, the building looked deserted, a cracked old complex in the outskirts of the city. The man who sold him the mattress was oddly pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He didn't say much, just helped carry it down, shoved it into Armand's pickup, and muttered, "Don't sleep between 3 and 4 a.m. That's all. It sounded like a joke at the time. Or maybe a warning from someone who had lost their mind. Armand chuckled, waved him off, and drove away with his new prize. That night he set it up proudly in his apartment. The rest of the place was a mess. Boxes, half-opened pizza boxes stacked on the counter, but the bed was perfect. Clean sheets, firm support, soft top. It felt like the only good decision he'd made in months. The first night on the mattress was dreamless, heavy sleep, so heavy in fact that he slept through his 8 a.m. alarm and woke up feeling like he had been buried under a blanket of stone. His body ached, not sore like exercise, but sore like something had pressed down on him all night. He shrugged it off, stress maybe, or just the fatigue of starting over. The second night he woke up at exactly 3:12 a.m., not from a sound, but from a feeling. A pressure on his chest, like someone or something was sitting there. When he tried to move, he found his limbs stiff, he could barely lift his arms, his eyes flicked toward the clock. The minute ticked from 312 to 313, and suddenly, as if a switch flipped, the weight was gone. The next morning, he noticed a tear in the mattress lining just a few inches at the edge. Odd. He hadn't seen that when he brought it in. He made a mental note to patch it later. By the fourth night, Armand was having trouble sleeping at all. The mattress no longer felt welcoming. It felt alive each time he laid down. It was as if something shifted subtly inside, like the layers were breathing at 300. And the room temperature would drop slightly, head wake up to the same unbearable pressure. But what truly terrified him was the sound. A slow scratching movement from inside the mattress, not below it, not under the bed, but within the layers. Something was crawling. He tried to brush it off. Rats, he said to himself, probably just city pests. He bought rat poison traps, sprayed every corner. But every trap stayed empty, no droppings, no bite marks, nothing to prove what he felt one night, unable to take it anymore. Armand decided to cut the mattress open. He waited until noon, when the sun was up, and fear felt weaker, and sliced a long vertical line along the mattress seam. At first everything looked normal, foam padding coils, but then he saw it. A narrow gap between the foam layers, deeper than it should be. A dark slit that led into a hollow pocket. He reached in with a gloved hand and felt something wet. Jerking his hand out, he stared at the thick, dark smear now coating his glove. It wasn't blood, it was too black, too cold, and it smelled like rotting earth. He leaned closer, and suddenly something twitched inside. A quick movement, like a worm curling deeper into the dark. He dropped the knife, stumbled backward, and left the room. He stayed at a friend's house that night. When he returned the next day, he found the mattress sealed, the cut he had made gone. The lining was untouched, no marks, no stains. Like it never happened. He laughed nervously. Maybe it was a breakdown, maybe he was dreaming the whole thing. But then he checked his phone. He had taken a photo of the cut. In the image, the mattress was wide open. Inside was a figure, pale, flesh-toned, curled into the foam like a fetus. No face, just skin stretched over muscle, arms too long, fingers too thin. As he stared at the photo, it began to flicker, and then it vanished from the gallery. That night he didn't sleep. He sat on the floor, facing the bed, holding a flashlight and a baseball bat. At 300 a.m., the room dimmed, as if the light itself was being eaten. He heard the familiar scratch, then a whisper, a gurgling, rasping voice from inside the bed. Come lie down, it's warmer inside. The sheets rose slightly, as if something was stirring beneath. He saw the mattress ripple like something shifting its weight just under the surface. Terrified beyond measure, Armand moved to the kitchen and set the stove on high. He lit a towel on fire, threw it onto the mattress, and watched the flames engulf the bed. The room filled with smoke. He expected screams, writhing, some inhuman wail, but there was only silence, and the smell not of burnt fabric but of burnt flesh. He barely escaped the apartment before the fire spread. The fire department arrived minutes later, controlling the blaze before it consumed the whole building. They found no signs of infestation, no animals, no remains in the mattress. The official report called it a small electrical fire. Armand didn't correct them. He moved to a different city, far from Raven Heights. For a long time he slept on the floor with just a blanket. Even now, years later, he can't lie on a mattress for more than a few hours. He always sets an alarm for 2:59 a.m. and wakes up just in case. But one day, scrolling through an online marketplace, he saw a familiar post, a mattress, queen-sized, barely used, for sale. The picture looked clean to clean. but Armin recognized the faint scratch on the corner just under the tag. The listing read, selling due to urgent move, pickup only, must go today, and 1. Message below it, do not sleep between 3 and 4 a.m. He reported the listing, but by the time moderators removed it, the item had already been marked sold. And somewhere someone is crawling into that bed for the first time tonight when the clock strikes 300 a.m. I never believed in haunted furniture demons, in dolls, maybe possessed mirrors, sure, but beds that just felt silly. At least until the bruises started appearing. It began 2 weeks after I'd moved into my new apartment in an old building in the heart of the city, the kind of building with cracked ceilings, faulty elevators, and pipes that moan at night. I had just gotten out of a breakup, and this was the only place I could afford. It came furnished, lucky me, with creaky chairs, a peeling wardrobe, and a queen-sized bed with a faded blue mattress. Nothing fancy, but enough to rest my bones after long shifts at the hospital. The first night was dreamless. I passed out the moment I hit the pillow, but the second night I woke up feeling sore. I thought I'd slept in an awkward position until I looked in the mirror. There was a bruise on my thigh, dark purple circular, like something had gripped me tightly. In the night I touched it and winced. I brushed it off. Maybe I bumped into something, I told myself, but the next morning there were 2 more, one on my upper arm, one just under my ribs. I started checking the bed. No springs poking out, no sharp edges. The mattress looked normal, but there was something odd about how it felt when I pressed down on it. Not firm, not soft either. It felt thick, like it had layers, and not just foam. Like something inside could shift ever so slightly if you applied just the right pressure. That's when I started hearing the sounds every night, around 2:50 a.m. I'd hear faint crinkling like dry skin rubbing against fabric. Or worse, like something crawling between the top and bottom layers of the mattress. It would stop the moment I moved, like it knew I was awake. By the 5th night, I placed my phone on the desk, recording audio. I slept fully clothed, lying on top of the sheets. When I listened the next morning, what I heard chilled my blood. The crinkling started at 252. Then came a low whispering, unintelligible, raspy, as if someone was murmuring, inches away from the microphone, and then the thump, a loud, wet thump, like something heavy had slammed itself into the mattress from the inside. That day I didn't sleep. I stayed at a friend's, but when I returned home the next evening, the bed was dented right where I usually slept, as if someone or something had curled up in my spot waiting. I tried to throw the mattress out, but it wouldn't fit through the door. When I tried to cut it open, my knife snapped cleanly, unnaturally. The blade cracked like it had struck bone, and when I examined the spot where the knife had hit, there was nothing, yet the air smelled of blood. I called my landlord. He laughed nervously. People always complain about the bed, he said. You're the 3rd tenant this year, and what happened to the others, I asked. He didn't answer, just hung up that night. I laid out salt around the bed, something I'd read in a forum. I stayed awake, flashlight in hand, eyes fixed on the mattress. The clock struck 300 a.m. The lights flickered and the mattress moved not, like someone shifting their weight. The surface actually rose, a bubble forming beneath the sheet, as if something was trying to emerge. I watched, paralyzed, as a slit formed in the fabric, then a finger poked through thin gray, rotting with a nail like black glass. It slid back in slowly. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I simply backed out of the room and locked the door. I spent the next 3 nights on the couch. Every morning, I'd check the bedroom each time the bed looked more sunken, as though it was digesting something or someone. On the fourth night I finally got the courage to unzip the mattress lining. What I found inside haunts me to this day. The mattress wasn't foam, it was filled with layers of skin, old, cracked, leathery skin, stacked like fabric, and between those layers, tucked like secrets, were bones, child-sized ribs, a broken hand, a jaw with no teeth. I fell back vomiting on the floor. I called the police, told them everything they showed up, searched the room, cut into the mattress. It was empty, clean foam, no skin, no bones, no smell. The officer looked at me like I was insane. "Ma'am," he said, "are you taking any medications right now?" I wasn't. But I wanted to start. I moved out that day. Left everything, my clothes, my books, even my cat. I didn't want anything that had touched that place. But the bruises didn't stop. They still appear, new ones every night. Only now I sleep on a new bed in a new city, but every night at 300 a.m. sharp, I feel the same pressure on my body, the same unseen weight pressing down on my chest, the same whisper so close to my ear, "You were mine once. You're still mine." I don't know if it's the same mattress, or if the thing inside it came with me. All I know is something crawled between the mattress layers, and now my bed leaves bruises.